Isn't it great to have people on your team that are much more talented than you are? Martin, who's already been playing the mandolin up here, he creates the graphics, and he created that image and the video. Give it up for Martin. Martin's in the room. If they're not on my team, I get jealous of people like that because I'm the guy with like the one gift. And so Martin, not only can he create those things, he'll actually be on the harmonica before the service ends. Just crazy. Anybody else jealous of those people? Anybody could create this for less than we pay Martin? No, I'm just kidding. Just joking. Martin has this incredible talent, and I love the fact that when a church comes together, what we begin to ask ourselves, remember, we talked about money with the Hope Project a second ago, but we want to be a church that leverages what is temporary. And one of the greatest temporary things that every one of us has in this room is the spiritual gift, passions, and talents that God has given us. And so I just want you to be thinking as we head into the end of this year and next year, what is the thing God's giving you regarding talent, passion, skill, gift, whatever, and are you leveraging it for the greatest good, for the biggest amount of impact inside the church, outside the church, in your workplace, in your relationships? So just think about that. Well, it's Christmas time, and if you are Mr. or Mrs. Scrooge in the room, I will shift my eyes quickly when my eyes meet yours throughout this message, all right? So if you're anybody Scrooge like in here just hates Christmas? All right, I didn't see any hands. I'm going to say a few things that come with this Christmas season of hope, and if it's your thing, like if you love the topic I throw out there, I just want you to make some audible noise, okay? Just to get you've been in the rain, you've been wrapped up, let's just let it out. All right, so Christmas, let's talk about the things with Christmas, and you yell when you find something you love. Who loves Christmas music? Who can't stand it? Scrooge. Just kidding, I'm just joking. Don't take that personal. Christmas trees, who loves the Christmas tree process? Real tree? Fake tree? I used to be a real tree guy. I did. And then we ruined, the first house we ever bought, we ruined the floors because I thought it needed about 128 ounces of water a day. And swear to you, ruined it. The wood just damaged, terrible. And we have an artificial tree now. But I will say this about myself in the past, and for those of you who are real tree people, be careful. It seems that real tree people are a little more arrogant and prideful. True? Fake tree people? I mean, they're kind of like, oh, we don't do that. That's stupid. Yeah, well, I'm not buying one next year. You are. You know, it's like, whatever, right? Christmas food, like food associated with holidays, Christmas, fruitcake people, whatever that's about. Anybody? Has anyone had the peppermint bark from Williams-Sonoma this season yet? I'm not a bark fan, but had some this past week, and it is awesome. I don't know what you guys were going to buy the pastor for Christmas, but just scratch that off the list, right? Whatever that car was, I've got enough Lexuses the last several Christmases. Just get the peppermint bark. And if you're new here, yes, I'm kidding. Maybe not in a tasteful way, but I'm joking. How many of you love the shopping? Jacqueline, Andre, be proud. How many of you love to get the shopping done on Black Friday? How many of you think Amazon was the best invention ever? We're even making our kids shop for each other on Amazon this year. Like, nope, we're not doing Target. We're not going to the mall. We're not doing Union Square. You guys just, here, get online. Don't look at anything terrible and buy each other gifts, you know. Kind of tell them like that. And how many of you love the gift giving? Like, you just be honest. We're not going to condemn you if you don't. How many of you just love to give gifts? Awesome. How many of you love the gift receiving? How many of you are like me, you love the gift receiving, but you try to act modest when you're around other people because it just feels weird? But then as soon as they're out the door or they go to the restroom, you look at the envelope for the gift card, right? Or you begin unwrapping because you're just like, you love this, but you don't want to show that. Christmas, how many of you love to travel during Christmas and have plans to travel this Christmas? Just a few of you. Awesome. How many of you are traveling, you just don't love it? Yeah. How many of you have family that you're looking forward to seeing over Christmas? Like that's kind of the one time. How many of you are going to see family but don't look forward to seeing certain ones? And how many of you have that crazy aunt? Anybody? The crazy uncle. I mean, we all have someone in our family that's like that. And so Christmas comes, and it seems like, whether it's the radio or the movies that come on, and I'm a fan of all of that, it seems like it's this season filled with hope. The only problem is sometimes what we begin to realize is that there's this thing called real life that doesn't take the Christmas season off. Right? And so if you have struggles, not only is Christmas going to make them seem like they're not happening, not only is Christmas not going to make them better, but what tends to happen during the Christmas season is if there's already issues relationally, financially, or with family, those things are only going to intensify, right? And so in relationships, right, you're like, okay, Ben, the relationship's kind of off on, Christmas isn't going to make it better. Ladies, just some advice. If it's an on-off relationship, should he buy her a Christmas gift? What if she says she doesn't want a Christmas gift? That's when, for sure, right? Like, it makes, you buy it. Get it. But if there's some situation going on in our lives, Christmas doesn't make it better. Think about the financial issue, right? It's supposed to be a season filled with hope. You're already in the hole, so to speak, in some way, debt, or just in over your head, or there's something you've got to repair at your home, whatever it may be, and you're already in this tough financial situation. But because Christmas is supposed to be this gift-giving season filled with hope, whether it's guilt or you just love to be a gift giver, you end up in a situation where it actually gets worse and intensifies more so than before you went into the Christmas season, right? If there's a family issue, whether it's with your parents, a sibling, or kids, unless you're only with them for an hour, just like short enough time that you can fake it, right? Like, we all love each other, but you check the mashed potatoes so that mom didn't poison. You want to make sure that you're well taken care of. But when you have 3 or 4 or 5 days with your family and there's already issues, do the issues go away during Christmas? We wish. They don't. And so here's what happens. We tend to have this thing I'll call hope in this series. We tend to have hope tied to hopeful circumstances or to hopeful seasons of our lives. But what I would love for us to be able to get our minds around, what I would love for us to be able to really latch onto and grasp is it possible for us to live with kind of this firm hope, no matter if our circumstances are leaning towards hope or leaning away from hope? And so here's what a statement that I want to make, and then we'll get into our passage in the Bible for this morning. Here's the statement. You'll see it on the screen. We worship whatever or whoever we place our hope in. We worship, we value, we glorify, we magnify, we esteem as something really worthy, whatever it is that we place our hope in. And so I can find myself at times, especially in the season, just going, hey, I don't need to check my heart this season or really think about being intentional, because Christmas is going to kind of do its own thing and take care of me. Does that make sense? Like, the kids are going to love this season, and the house is going to look great, and the music's out. But I wonder, no matter if we're having a hope-filled or in a season where hope really isn't filling our lives right now, is it possible that God gives us something in the Christmas story itself to latch onto that's not dependent upon whatever circumstance, positively or negatively, we find ourselves in? Our text for this morning is Luke chapter 1. If you need a Bible, please raise your hand, and our volunteers will hand you one of those Bibles. And as you receive one of those Bibles, we're on page 555. The rest of us were Luke chapter 1. We'll start in verse 26. Lots of hands up over here. This is where kind of the pre-story to what we usually hear Christmas story-wise, whether in church or on Charlie Brown Christmas special. I think it's Linus that gives some of this. But as you guys turn there, would you stand with me? I want to look at Luke chapter 1, 26 through 38. And really this idea, our series, Tangible Hope, meaning, is there something we can actually latch onto, something that doesn't ebb and flow based upon what's reality in our lives? Can there be something that's true regardless of whether it's been an amazing work year? It's true regardless of whether or not it's been a great relational year. It's true whether or not you and I have had our emotions in shape or they've kind of gotten out of shape. For whatever reason, can we find something that's true regardless? Here's what it says. In the first century, Luke writes about what we've come to know as kind of the before story to the Christmas story. He says this: in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary, and he came to her and said, "Greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was greatly troubled at the saying and tried to discern what sort of greeting this might be. And the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. And the Lord will give to him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." And Mary said to the angel, "How will this be, since I am a virgin?" And the angel answered her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. Therefore the child to be born will be called Holy, the Son of God. And behold, your relative Elizabeth in her old age has also conceived a son, and this is the 6th month with her who was called barren. For nothing will be impossible with God." And Mary said, "Behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." And the angel departed from her. You may be seated. I want to look at three unique things here, really 2 characters and then 1 setting out of this story to really talk about the way in which tangible hope was entering or was going to enter the world. The first character I want to look at is this angel whose name is Gabriel. You see it right off the bat there in verse 26, Gabriel, and he is the one who gets commissioned by God. He is the one whom God looks to when it's time to go for it. He is the one who God gives the privilege of going and sharing this amazing news that hope is coming from heaven to earth. Wouldn't it be awesome to be him? Who loves to tell good news? Who loves to be the first one to tell good news? Some call it gossip. We just love telling people good news. There's no gossip here. I love to tell good news, and I wish more of you would have raised your hands. I'm dealing with a whole bunch of Scrooges, I feel like, this morning. But I love to tell good news. Like, for instance, I remember when I stood on the stage like I'm doing this morning, but down the street at the W Hotel, and was able to tell our church, guess what? We don't have to wonder anymore if we'll be on the rooftop of the W or in this room, if we'll have kids space, if we won't. God has given us our own space. That day I got to deliver that news was like, this is awesome. When Shauna and I get to tell our kids about some surprise trip, or whether it's just we're going to take you guys to Chuck E. Cheese, whatever it is that you guys love. This shows we're sacrificing. But then I get there, play Let's Make a Deal, and kind of I'm in it with them. At that point in time, some skee ball, and then I'm like, all right, I can do this. I try to be sacrificial, but it's fun to be able to tell them, hey, we're going to do this fun thing. I love at the end of a year or some strategic point during the year to be able to have coffee or lunch with one of my staff members and say, hey, you've done an exceptional job. I'm going to give you a raise for next year. I love those moments because I love being someone who gets to deliver good news. There's nothing like being able to sit across from someone and when they don't have no clue that it's coming and be able to go, hey, guess what? And that's what Gabriel gets to do. Now, what's interesting is that you think, how does it work with God and the angels? Like, is it just sort of a Rolodex God has of all the angels and he just takes turn, like, all right, Gabriel, you get this one, and Michael, you get this one, and then we just kind of roll through it? Gabriel gets like a couple of really cool jobs. In fact, you saw where Mary was told that her relative Elizabeth is also with child and is 6 months along. Guess who gets to deliver that news to Zechariah, Elizabeth's husband? Come on, guys. We're going to start elementary, and then we'll get to the advanced stuff in a second. It's Gabriel, right? And so earlier in chapter 1, in fact, if you have a Bible open in chapter 1 in Luke, if you just look before then, you'll see the birth of John the Baptist foretold. John the Baptist is going to be the son to Zechariah and Elizabeth, but Gabriel, instead of showing up just to Elizabeth, he shows up to Zechariah, and he and Zechariah begin this conversation. Zechariah's like, I'm really old, and my wife is barren, but Gabriel's like, no, you just need to believe. This is going to happen. This is your future. This is what's coming. And I want to show you one verse, Luke chapter 1, verse 19. If we could have that on the screen, you probably see it on the same page. So there's in this conversation, Zechariah and the angel, and listen to this. Just when you think about how awesome your job description is at wherever you work, I want you to listen to what Gabriel's is, all right? And the angel answered him, I am Gabriel. Here's what I do. Here's coming. Here's my job description. Here's what my role is on the team. I stand in the presence of God, and I was sent to speak to you and to bring you this good news. Do you hear the description? What do you do, Gabriel, when you're at the office? I stand in the presence of God. He's not saying I stood this one time, had this awesome worship moment. He's saying this is my everyday thing. I stand in the presence of God. Not bad, right? Some of you are like, I don't know, Ben. I get bored if I don't have a whole lot of things to focus on. I don't think that would be the case in this moment. He's just going, here's what I do. I stand in the presence of God, which means this. When he comes to Mary to talk to Mary about her bringing tangible hope, the Savior of the world, through her womb into the world, he's not just anticipating something about this Jesus who would become a baby. So we have to remember quite a few things when we take stories like this. We have to remember, okay, what else do we know to be true? Here's one thing that if we don't know, let me just tell you that's true. In Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, it says that the world was created by Jesus, which means this, that before Adam and Eve was, Jesus was. Before Adam and Eve were, Jesus was. Okay, that in Jesus all things were made by him and for him and through him and to him. And Colossians 1 says all things hold together in him, which means this. When Gabriel comes to tell Mary that she's going to have Jesus, Gabriel is not saying, he's not simply saying that, hey, you're going to have this baby boy who's going to become the Son of God. What he's saying by his own experiential knowledge and wisdom is this, hey, the Son of God is about to become your baby. It's huge difference. He's not just thinking, anticipating, so God told me this, Mary, that this baby would come to you and then he would grow up and be this or that. Gabriel already knew this baby as this or that. Gabriel's already been, remember what he said? I stand in the presence of God. And so sometimes this Christmas story can make our mind play tricks on us and go, wait a minute. Jesus doesn't just show up on the scene when he gets birthed by his mother, does he? No, ask Gabriel. Gabriel has already beheld his worth, has already been in his presence in a consistent way, been worshiping him. So when he comes to Mary, it is not saying, hey, you're going to have a baby who's going to be the Son of God. He's saying, nah. He uses that language, but what he's saying to her is, the Son of God is actually about to become your baby. Crazy? And Gabriel gets to deliver this news. And sometimes we deliver news that we're not sure, we haven't had experience with. Somebody just tells it to us and we're like, I don't know what this means, but so-and-so is going to happen. Gabriel has this experiential knowledge of who Jesus is. Can you imagine how excited he would have been regardless? But how excited must he be to let Mary know that, oh my gosh, the one who's just been revealed to me and other angels like me, the one who's just been in the heavenlies, who's just been on the throne in the spiritual way that only a few of us have had access to, all of a sudden, this hope that I behold every single day is about to become tangible. Have you ever been in that place where maybe it's on a trip or you're at the Grand Canyon or you see the sunrise or you see a rainbow and you're by yourself and you're just like, oh, I wish I had someone to show this to? That had to be what was inside of Gabriel. Like, oh my gosh, Mary, you don't understand. You don't understand. I'm in the presence of this king every day, and somehow he's going to become human to reveal what God is actually like to the world. Amazing. And he gets to deliver the news. Before we talk about Mary, let's talk about the setting where all this is going to take place, where Mary and Joseph are from and where Jesus would grow up. We always think, well, Christmas, Jesus, Bethlehem. Actually, of course, he was born in Bethlehem, but where did he grow up? He grew up in this little town called Nazareth. Best estimates, the biggest estimates anyway I got from my studies is that at most this was a town or a village with about 2,000 people. It's interesting to me that Luke uses the word city when he talks about Nazareth. I don't know about where you're from, but where I'm from, we don't call that a city. Anybody from a place like Nazareth? 2,000 people, maybe it was 800, 1,200 at most, though, about 2,000 people in Nazareth. And so the question is, well, the Messiah is going to come from here. What is that like? What is the place like? What is it this hub of business travel and commerce? What is this place like? I want to, rather than kind of launching into a long story about all that Nazareth is like and pictures and all that stuff, I want to show you a conversation between two of Jesus' first disciples, so two of the 12, Philip and Nathanael. And here's what's happened before I show you these two verses in John chapter 1. Philip has come to understand who Jesus is claiming to be, and Jesus has asked Philip to follow. Now Philip's trying to get Nathanael to say, hey, there's this Jesus, we need to follow him, he's invited us kind of thing. Watch this conversation, and you will know everything you ever needed to know about Nazareth just from this conversation. John chapter 1, verse 45 and 46. Here's 45. So remember, Jesus had already interacted with Philip. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, we have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph. 46. Everything you need to know about Nazareth right here. Nathanael said to Philip, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And Philip said to him, come and see. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? I want you to think about, and we're going to actually say it out loud, so get a place in your mind. I want you to think about the place where you grew up, and I want you to think about the town that was kind of like this, where you're like, nothing good comes from there. Like your mom didn't let you go there after sunset, right? They never beat your team in sports. They didn't have a football team, right? I mean, you know that. Think about that town, and I want you to say it on 3, all right? Everybody got the town in their mind, that they kind of, the town around them? 1, 2, 3. Sioux City, Iowa. Where else? Moonville. Moon, like Moon, Ville. Man, you're full of those towns, man. You gave a good one during the first service. Impressive. From South Carolina, there you go. It's that town where, like, if you heard something awesome happen, there's no way. Like, if the president of the United States, heaven forbid, came from that town that you're thinking of right now, you'd be like, there is no way he's from Moonville, right? I mean, there is just no way. Or if you heard that the CEO of a great tech startup out here was from that town that you're thinking of, you're just like, No, they still have dial-up internet. There's no way that guy came from that place. It's just not possible. Or if they started playing on the Giants with 49ers, you're like, yeah, the professional athlete, and you're reading the magazine while you're at the game, you're like, he can't. Whoa, there's just no way. Well, that's the outlook they have. Now, remember, we're talking about the Messiah coming from Nazareth, but Nathanael, just being honest, just with his upbringing, whatever prejudices he had, whatever his parents had told him, he's just going, there is no way anything good comes from Nazareth. And isn't it amazing that God brings tangible hope from unlikely places? Some of you are in a season of life right now, and the last thing you can imagine being true during this time of year is anything hopeful. The relationship you wanted to be a certain way right now, it just isn't. The family that you wanted to repair things with, mom, dad, sibling, maybe your kids, you wanted it to be at a certain place. You had high hopes. You had set goals almost a year ago for that to be true, and it just isn't true. Your financial dreams, perhaps you made a bad investment, or you went way over your head in debt, or there was a medical issue and you just couldn't do anything about it, and so you had planned to save for this or that. It's just not there right now. And I just wonder if some of us would allow our hearts to be open to God bringing hope out of the unlikely places during this season. Can we get something to latch onto from him, or does our hope, whatever our hope quotient is right now, does it have to be lined up with where our circumstances are in regard to hopefulness or hopelessness? And one of the beautiful things I love about the reality of Nazareth is that God's just showing us, hey, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the setting. It doesn't matter the circumstance. It really doesn't even matter what's at stake in the current reality. God can actually bring hope out of a hopeless situation. And I wonder if any of us in this room, just like, Ben, I thought this would be a different year. I've got friends in this room struggling with medical conditions. In this room, I've got friends in this room who want to stay in San Francisco, but it looks like they're going to have to move either to a different state or back to their homeland, the country. And you just want to know, Ben, there's just not much hope in my circumstances. Well, stay on board with me this morning and throughout this series. Let's see if there's something that doesn't come from our circumstances that we can latch onto. Isn't that what we're looking for in the end? Something that doesn't rise and fall when our circumstances rise and fall? Because if you and I have lived long enough, we know what? Circumstances, that's their pattern. Continue to be their pattern. Sometimes the seasons are really, really good, and good for a long time. But we know how the pattern goes, and God's bringing tangible hope from an unlikely place. He also brings tangible hope from an unlikely person. Look at Mary's life. Angel shows up to her. She's freaked out. Don't blame her. Says, greetings, O you who are favored. The Lord is with you. She's greatly troubled. She's trying to discern what sort of greeting this might be, and you can imagine, and then she just gets into the kind of the biology of it, right? Mary, she doesn't understand maybe everything about how the baby making process works, but she at least knows simple biology, and so she just says to the angel in verse 34, how will this be? I'm a virgin, right? I mean, you can imagine, if you've ever been around a woman who was pregnant, there's a lot that goes on in that, right? There's some emotions going on, and you always give them a pass, guys. That's just free advice for those of you who will be fathers in the future, all right? Just give them whatever they want to eat, give it to them, right? Whatever they think is terrible about you, deal with your own insecurity later, but give it to them, right? And so Mary, she would already have these kind of, I'm going to be a mom, the normal stuff, but she's going, listen, when Joseph finds out about this is not going to be good. And we'll talk about him later on in this series, but when Joseph finds out about this, remember, they're betrothed to one another, which it's hard to get an understanding in America, kind of because we date, and then we have, typically at least, hopefully you date the person before you marry him, but you date, and then there's kind of this engagement, either for a long or short time, and then there's a marriage. But for them, it's like engagement, but there's already this legal standing thing between them, so much so that even though they weren't married officially yet, there was enough official contractual covenant things going on between Joseph and Mary that if Joseph wanted out, and you'll see this in Matthew's account, he would actually have to file for a divorce, and it says that he would do that quietly, but it just lets you know kind of they have this commitment going on. She's just going, how will this be since I'm a virgin? And then, the biology kind of goes out the window, and the angel explains some imagine you're Mary, right? You just know how things work. Like, it's just like, how the biology is supposed to work, and you're like, how will this be? Verse 34, and then 35, the angel's like, the Holy Spirit will come upon you. Some power of the Most High is going to overshadow you. and you'll have your son. I mean, there you go, Mary. What's wrong with that? Here it is. This is, obviously, it makes sense. But he encourages her. I love that the angel does this because he didn't have to, but he says, hey, just so you know, your relative Elizabeth in her old age, verse 36, she's also conceived a son who's, by the way, is going to be John the Baptist, really going to be the forerunner to the Messiah, Jesus, going to be the prophet that says, hey, make way, he's coming, repent, for the kingdom of God's at hand. He would be the one who baptizes Jesus. It's pretty amazing that God brings that about. And I love that God brings this encouragement because what Mary understood about Elizabeth is that Elizabeth was as likely to get pregnant almost as Mary was. Does that make sense? So remember, having babies, huge deal. It's a big deal now, but it's a huge deal back in these times, first century. And it was just kind of given to Elizabeth, hey, you're barren. We've tried this for 10 years. We've tried it for 20 years. We tried it for 30 years, and there's no baby coming. We're a barren couple. We're not going to have children. And so when Mary hears this from the angel, she's like, oh, I know Zechariah and Elizabeth, they've not been able to get pregnant either, and so, okay, maybe that makes sense. And then you're actually going to see, if you follow the journey in the coming days and months with Mary and Elizabeth, Mary's going to go stay with Elizabeth, and so you can imagine she's going to be encouraged because I'm not in this alone. But for now, she's like, how will this possibly be? And then the angel says to her something we really need to sink our teeth into. Because remember, before we even go into verse 37, I want to remind you that some 700 years before Jesus was to be born, the prophet Isaiah said this in Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. He prophesied that, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel meaning God with us, God putting on flesh, tangible hope showing up in the package of a human being. And so this had been prophesied. It wasn't that Mary was probably unfamiliar with the prophecy. She probably just never thought it'd be a little girl from Nazareth, and even if it was, it probably wouldn't be her, but it's her. And the angel says to her in verse 37, for nothing will be impossible with God. Is there anything going on in your relationships, in your job, in your emotions, in your life, in your mental state of being right now where you need to hear this spoken over your situation? So unlikely, it seems. It's so impossible. The potential seems daunting. It seems like there's no way it will ever take place. And you just need to hear God speak over your life, your whatever it is. For nothing is impossible with God. If there's something you need to hear that for, I just pray that you'll lean into that. Not that you'll use it as a verse to essentially hold God hostage. He doesn't owe us anything. He's not bound to our wishes or desires. But he's a God who wants to be trusted. He's a God who wants to hear our desires. He's a God who wants us to express our desires to him. Is there anything in your life right now where you just need to hear God say, for nothing will be impossible with God? Since we started the process, we've kind of let you guys know that Shauna and I are in the adoption process in the country of India, and things are really moving at a really fast clip. And September 15th, long before they suggested we would get our stuff in, we got our stuff in. We're kind of OCD like that, crazy over the top, like, no, we're going to get it done if we don't get any sleep, and crazy anyway. Positive and negatives that come with that. We got all over there to them, and we're just kind of waiting, right? We kind of got our time frame, and I know my prayer was, God, you're going to give us this referral by Christmas, and she's going to be in our arms by June. That's just my prayer. And to be honest, sometimes when God begins to answer a lot of your prayers in real specific ways, you keep praying, which you should do, but sometimes I come to expect that he's kind of got to do the thing that I want him to do. And anyway, about a month ago, we got a call, and essentially just letting us know that, hey, things have turned differently in India, and our agency worker starts using words to me over the phone like refund, like do you consider another country? And the short of it is, and that Shauna and I both arrived at the same decision, that no, we're going to stay in the process. They let us know that right now, for the age range and gender and health conditions that we have requested, that they're not giving any kids in that category. And so we had to make a decision. Do you want a refund? And the reason I didn't go that route is because it wasn't because of great faith. Let me just be honest. Shauna's got the great faith on this one. I'm kind of straggling behind in the faith category on this one. It was just I think if I get out of the process, I won't re-enter the process. And we didn't feel led to another country at that time, and for lots of reasons. But so we stayed in me because I'm well, it's the worst, like the best of three terrible possibilities. That's kind of how it was. But Shauna's no, Ben, this is going to happen. We're going to have the faith. And anyway, we don't have a clue how that's going to go down. It's one of the situations where we need this to be true. But here's what I want for us as a church, for you and your relationships, for our families, for our jobs, for all these things, for the mission of our church, the heart of faith that exists in the Epic congregation. I want it to be true that we are people who live as though this is true. Doesn't mean that God will make all of our impossibilities possible, but it means that we're going to trust him to say, you know what, God, we believe you can do this. God, the odds are against us. We don't think we can get pregnant. For some people in our church, other people, it's like, I don't think that I'm going to be able to stay in the city. And I don't know, we all have different things, and God's always up to something different that we don't always know. But just to be able to be people who pray this over our lives, God, would you help us believe that nothing's impossible when you step into the situation? I want to be a person that does that. And the text simply ends with this. Mary says, behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. And the angel departed from her. I love Mary's response. She wasn't afraid to ask questions of the angel. Don't be afraid to ask God questions. But at the end of the day, you and I have to decide, even before all of our questions get answered, will we become men, will we become women who say to God, hey, if this is the thing you've got for me, I think you're crazy, but if this is the thing you've got for me, if this is the place, if this is the time, if this is the company, if this is the location, if this is the country, if this is the mission, if this is the purpose of my life, I'm in. The NIV says it like this. Mary said to the angel, may it be to me as you have said. Where are you at in that equation? Like, if we're honest this morning, God, if you'll do this, this, and this, I'm in. God, if you'll do it in this kind of time frame, I'm in. To be honest, in this adoption thing, I'm like, God, I don't want to become a parent again when I'm 40 or 45 or 50 or 55. But if this is what you have, this is what you're giving me. Okay. I'm in. There's nothing in the world, not in the Christmas season or any other season, like being in on whatever it is that God has for you. And this is not simply an individual exercise. It's partly, but it's an us thing. It's an us thing with your relationships. It's an us thing with your kids and your parents. It's an us thing with this church. Will we be in? Will we become a community that just goes, you know what? God, that sounds crazy. I can't believe we're even trying to do that as a church, year 2, but we're in. And then remember, Jesus would grow up, right? Jesus would grow up and he would call men to follow him, especially around the age of 30. For the next 3 years, these men would follow him. And like the Jews had done for hundreds of years, they would celebrate the Passover. And the Passover was a great celebration, if you remember reading Exodus, but the Passover was this great celebration of the fact that God, using the Passover blood, had rescued the nation of Israel from Pharaoh and their slavery in Egypt. And so for hundreds of years, they would celebrate. It would commemorate what God had done for the Israelites back then. Jesus is headed to the cross, but about a week before then, he comes to this moment to enjoy celebrating the Passover with his disciples, and they're all at the table with him, and he lets them know, hey, I've been eager to eat this meal with you. And Jesus begins to, in a tangible way, which I love, especially in line with what we're talking about this morning, in a tangible way, Jesus begins to say, hey, the bread from now on, this is going to represent my body that's about to be broken for you. This cup is going to be representative of my blood of the covenant, which is going to be poured out for you. And every time that you think of me, every time you remember me, do this as a tangible reminder of who I am and what I've come to do. We're going to enter into that right now. I think no better time than the Christmas season to just love this experience. And so I'm going to pray for us. And then I want us to worship. And remember what we said, worship is regarding hope. We worship, we value, we magnify, we glorify, we highly esteem whatever or whoever we place our hope in. And I hope that you've seen this morning that God's given us something tangible to grasp onto. So if it's a great Christmas season circumstantially, he's given us something to hold on to. If it's not so great, if it's just kind of blah and you're ready to get into the next year, he's there, he's ever present, and he's calling us to remember, really to sink our teeth in and to taste his goodness, his mercy, his death on our behalf. And so I'm going to pray. The band will be up here to lead us in some song. Remember, worship includes a lot of things. Really, it can be anything that magnifies God. You'll have a chance to sing during this time. 3 songs the band will lead us in. You'll have a chance to walk out from your space, form a line around the wall, and observe the communion elements that'll be there. You just dip the bread in the cup and partake in that. If you're a person who just wants to or needs to reflect quietly, if there's sin in your life you need to confess, if there's a hope of the impossible that you need to express to God, you're going to have ample time, I think, to do that over these next moments. Let me pray, and then we'll move forward into this experience response.